Okay, so before going on with functions, we first study the functions, the so-called built-in Python functions, which are already available. An important element of, well, just to be clear, you are students in algorithms and data structures class, so you have to learn how to write your functions, you have to learn how to implement your algorithms, which data structure is the best for a given problem, and so on. This is your primary goal. So in this phase, in this class, you have to learn how to build your own brick, your own building block. Okay? In hiring interviews, people are often asked, okay, please implement a function which accesses an SQL database and returns how many employers we have. Okay, it's quite often that people is required on a hiring interview is required to code something. So it's very important. But in real life, you try to adopt already existing code. Python distinguish a community of developers creating an extraordinary of quality code, a lot to carry out a variety of tasks. So you have only to put together the right ingredients to obtain your desired code. Nevertheless, you must know what are you doing, which building block together and which cannot. So you have to learn. But before reinventing the wheel every day of your programmer life, you have to look around, Google, spend some time Googling what you need to learn if someone around the world faced something similar to your problem, how it faced, how it possibly solved, and so on. This is an important step. You know, currently, one of the most important websites, portals in the web for programmers is Stack Overflow, which is more than fundamental. People posting, okay, hello guys, I have this problem. And then in a couple of days, they are answered, this is my solution, this is my solution, this is my solution. A discussion begins, okay, but with this solution, you have this problem. Okay, this is how to circumvent this problem, and so on. So a discussion begins and the solution is refined and refined. So this is a great place for suggestions, for advices, for help at large. But of course, you have to learn what to do, how to do, and so on. So the basics are required. Okay, let's begin with the built-in functions. The first one we study today is int, which converts, if possible, of course, the argument into an integer value. So if you provide something non-integer but with a numeric meaning, it's converted into an integer. If you provide, for example, a character or a string, you will be returned with an error message and no output. So, for example,
Professor?
yes,
Anh nấu gì không
Can
nhỉ?
I see your screen?
Yes.
here we are. Thank you.
Ôi.
Before this is the first book I suggested for Python. Think Python, how to think like a computer scientist. I find it quite useful and the most quite useful, and it describes almost everything you need to know about Python basics. So we are currently working here we are in chapter 3. I am actually more or less closely following it. It's freely available, and to make it even more available, I uploaded a PDF copy into the files section of our Teams. So you can download your strongly suggested. It is fundamental to learn Python unless you already know Python, of course. Just to be clear, with some exceptions, we'll skip chapter 4 and chapter 9. We'll study almost everything of this book. Okay, so this is how the int function works. If I provide a string which the Python interpreter is able to decode as a number, then it's an integer number, then it's converted into an integer. Okay, so if you type, if you provide the string 32 as an argument of the integer function, then it's regarded as a number and is converted into an integer. It's okay?
Yeah.
Okay. If you provide a floating point number, such as this one, for example, it's truncated and the integer part is returned. If you provide an alphabetic character, you are returned with a value error because you provided a wrong argument. I forgot to say that the variables or values provided in parentheses, enclosed in parentheses, provided to functions are called arguments. function arguments. For example, when we type print and in z in this case is the only argument of print function. Okay. Please note that the int function does not round your number, simply truncates. So everything, even if, so if you provide 3.99999, which is nearly 4, no rounding to the obvious integer value, which should be 4, is done, is carried out. Instead, you are returned with 3, which is the integer part of the number. Okay? It's okay for everyone?
Yeah,
it's okay
Professor.
for everyone out there?
Yeah.
Hello?
Yes, yes,
Yes.
yes, Professor.
Please note that an important remark is this one. Please note that they are not the same. Even if you should say they are the same from their output. You cannot distinguish, but their type is quite different. And their effect is quite different. Look, for example, if you ask to print x plus 1, no, first y plus 1, and then x plus 2. If you add 1 to an integer, of course you are returned with the right answer, namely 33 in this case. Whereas if you try to add 1 to a string, you are returned with a type error. In this case, be careful. In this case, the Python interpreter tells me, look, you are trying to concatenate. You can only concatenate strings, because in Python, the addition operator, the plus operator, can be used to add numbers, okay, of course, obviously, and to concatenate strings. Meaning that, for example, this is the effect. Okay, they are placed together, but you cannot mix. You cannot mix strings and numbers. Any question? It's okay?
Yeah, it's all fine.
It's okay for everyone? Okay. Another function is float. float can be used to convert, sorry. Be careful that int works with, let's say, this one, okay, but doesn't work with this one. So you can convert a string containing an integer number into int, but and of course, look, you can convert a floating point into an integer, but you cannot carry out a double conversion, kind of string with a floating value into an integer. Okay, so only one conversion is allowed. Okay, float is a function used to convert non-floating point values into floating point. So, for example, if you need to convert an integer value into a floating point value, you can adopt float. This is the result. And you can convert a string with a numeric value inside into a floating point number. Whereas the string function str converts the argument into a string. Okay, Python provides two sets, broadly speaking, provides two sets of functions. Those immediately available, among which they are int, float, bool, str, and so on, and others we'll see in the following lectures, while others are not immediately available and requires to be explicitly imported prior their use. This is the case, for example, of a large set of mathematical functions which are not immediately available because not always people requires them in their daily Python use. So they are available, but not immediately available, directly available, as you have to import them. The best way and the most precise way to import them is to use the import instruction followed by the argument which is the name of the module. I forgot to say that Python has a very large documentation site which is probably docs.python.org, which contains an enormous quantity of documentation, including the documentation required to work with all available modules, which are bundled with Python installation by itself. So when you install Python, actually you install all these modules, which a module is a set of functions. Sorry, I forgot to mention the most important definition, which is a module. A module is a set of functions and constants, if necessary. For example, math is a module, is a Python module. In other languages, they are called packages or libraries, but the concept is the same. They are sets of functions together with useful constants. For example, the mathematical module contains the values of pi, the values of the neighbor number e, and other useful constants. And to use a mathematical function you have contained in the mathematical module, of course, you first need to import your module, and then you need to prepend to the desired function the name of the module. So actually the name, for example, of the cosine function you can see in this example is not cos. Be careful. The full name, to be precise, the fully qualified name of the cosine function is math.cos. And this holds for all functions contained in the same module. All functions, for example, the square root, is a fully qualified name which is math.sqrt with its argument. And so pi is math.pi. Sin is math.sin, and so on. There is plenty of mathematical functions in the mathematical module. This rule, which in dot notation is a precise sign of the object-oriented nature of Python programming language. Python is an object-oriented programming language, and in this case we are using a module. You see that we'll use the dot notation quite frequently when with Python. An important remark. You in your program you need to invoke the import statement just once, and by convention import statements are placed at the very beginning of your code. So this is not the case, of course, but in this case I import the mathematical module this way. Now it's available, and if you use a more or less sophisticated text editor or IDE, if you type the module name dot and then you press the tab key, which is the key with the two arrows on your keyboard, you are returned with a list of all available functions. And constants. I always forget constants. For example, NaN, which is not a number, or pi, or some logarithmic functions. Log base 10, log base 1p, I don't know, log base 2, and so on. There's plenty of functions. Here it is. E, for example, math.p. Here it is, okay? So input once, use many times you need. And this is very useful that you have to prepend the module name to your function constant, because it does prevent any conflict name. And so if you define your RPy, you can distinguish from math.py, because they are different variables. Okay, this one is pi. There is no conflict. There is math.py is a 2 pi. They are two different things. Any questions? Is it clear for everyone?
Yeah, Professor.
It's okay for you?
Yeah, but Professor, how you open that list of the constants and after math?
You have to the list of functions and constants. Constants are listed together. You have to type the name of the module, point, plus, dot, and then you have to strike the tab key on your keyboard, which is the key with 2 arrows on the left. And you are returned with a set with all available functions in that module. Okay. Very well. Before going away, I should like to call the attendance. Okay. So Abdul Rakeb, Ahmed Kova. Sorry, I will learn your surname. Arkala Chandra Shekhar Yodi Vinay. Awan. Something. Sorry? Thank you very much. Again, Abdul Rakeb is here with us. Ahmad Bekova. Arkala? No. Awan Fahad? No. Babayev? Banda Tarun? Baviskar? Bimeni Imana? Gadiji Udaya? Gambold Tuguldur? Ganivada Krishna? Isimbi? Jennifer? Yahir Hussain? Koravai Anton? Mangala Giri? Mehadi Tamirat? Mendipaev? Murtaza Ghulam? Naminevi? Nguyen Tuan. Patel Uvesh. Peram Divya. Ruggeri. Tiwari Navin. Ullah Obaid. Umutoni Vanessa. Uera Keza Gloria. Borobeva. Wong Din. Very uncomfortable, this application. Very uncomfortable. Yanda Kudigi, Sidi. Zildiz Bekova. More or less I succeeded.
Sao em không hiện ở
Okay,
trên
thank you very
lớp
much. See you tomorrow. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, if you don't have any question, see you tomorrow as well.
Okay, thank you, Professor. See you.
You're welcome. Have a nice day.
Goodbye, have a nice day.
Okay.
Professor, I'm trying to use the import math function.
Yes.
Find the square root of 4.
Okay.
How can I print it?
Here we have to type print.
Print?
Print math.sqrt.